Shé, and for those that do know Shé, she's a very busy lady, so we're very blessed to be able to have her share tonight.
Now tonight is going to be about the spirit realm, people that have passed over to the other side. This is a traditional day on the old pagan calendar, on the old European calendar, where they honoured the ancestors, right? And you'll find honouring of ancestors takes place in just about every culture in the world. If you keep going back far enough, honouring your ancestors, of course, you come to the original ancestor, the first creator. Right, he's our original ancestor. I think I was one of the first people in Australia to start teaching mediumship. But I've written a book called Spirit Shots, which my husband named. He comes up with like catchy little names for things. And so when I said I've got 163 photos that people, mostly my students around Australia, have sent me of ghosts and spirits, what should I call it? And he went, Spirit Shots, have another drink. It's open for suggestion if anybody ever comes up for a better name for that. But what I put in here is a lot of evidence. It's so bizarre that we have skeptics that still deny that there is spirit, right? And I saw a lovely interview on TV the other day where this guy started to make fun of this lady going, I'm very scientific. And she said, well, if you're scientific, then you've got to look at the evidence. And she said, when there has been reports of people sighting ghosts for 4,000 years in written history, and the first written ghost story that we have was written in ancient Babylon, and it's 4,000 years old. So she said, if you've got written accounts, first-hand accounts of people seeing the stuff, then as a scientist, you've got to take that as evidence. We are lucky these days because we don't just have written accounts, we've also got photos of these spirits. And this is me doing a talk just like this, not long after I did the TV show in 2008. And there was somebody off the side very determined to get in contact with somebody in the audience, and I didn't see it as a hand like that, I just felt a disturbance. But when the message came through, the lady's husband had only passed away a few weeks before, right? And he was very determined to get his message through. So, and you can quite clearly see it's a hand, it can't be anything else. And I tend to be a little bit of a ghost magnet in photos. People take photos of me and ghosts end up turning up on them. So that's why you see me and the ghost. It's not like I set the shots up, I can't because I'm in them. So this is our ancestor, this is Sarah and my ancestor. This is the amazing de Montford. Annie de Montford. In 1781, she was one of the first people to go around actually doing seances on stages in Europe. So we've got this in our family. And Dave was actually asking me a really interesting question yesterday. Does everybody see spirit? No, not everybody sees spirit. It depends on what your talent is. And we've obviously got this ability in our family to be able to see spirit. But not everybody sees spirit. And that's why people who see spirit will share their gifts with other people who don't see spirit and don't sense spirit. But we are all aware of spirit to some degree because we are alive. So we have a first-hand account of our own spirit being in our body. Tonight is the night, traditionally on that calendar, where people start to get that question of what is death? Why do we experience so much death? And over the last 2 years, I know within my family, within my group of friends, I certainly have been touched by death. And I think there's been an awful lot of people that have been touched recently by that grief of death, right? That loss of that person who was right there with you, and now there's just this hollow space where they were. Right? And if you can't sense spirit, like that first photo that we showed you, they might have their hand up, waving madly, trying to get your attention. And if they can't quite make you see, then people like us help. But we can all become aware of spirit, but we've got to understand what it is. And as I was saying today, the other day, there are different levels. There are levels of people that just do this and don't really understand it. There are levels of people who develop it to the degree that Sarah's developed hers. You know, if there was an Olympic medal, she would have won it for mediumship. But there's also like people like me who experience it and go, why is this so? And then goes and finds all the best teachers that I can around the globe to try and explain it better. And what we know about death is in Western society largely ignored. I think the reason why we feel grief so strongly in the West is because death is hidden from us. If somebody dies, then very quickly an ambulance comes, takes that person away, and you don't see them again until the funeral. Right? So there's this huge gap all of a sudden. Whereas in traditional cultures, my dad, he was 10 years old when his grandmother died. So grandmother de Montford was actually from a barony. So she married a commoner and they pensioned her off and got her out of the barony. But because she was from a barony, they laid the body in state so that the people could come and visit her. But being in an ordinary 3-storey house in Essex, they had to lay her out on the kitchen table. And there she stayed for 7 days. Right? So they put her in one of her best dresses, put a nice cover on the table, put her on the table, and everybody got a chance to come in and sit with her and feel that she was gone. Like the body was still there, but the spirit no longer is. And that grieving process was allowed to happen. Dad remembers, because he was so close to his grandmother, that they let him as a 10-year-old have special time in this room with her, right, so that he could really get his emotions out and feel that she had passed. We don't do that in Western culture anymore. And so death is very much a mystery. So apart from what most people in indigenous cultures would know about death, we know even less than that. So what is death? So what we do know is that death is not the end. Einstein used to say that consciousness still exists. We know that because you can't destroy energy. I have a little video that's on YouTube, Facebook, explaining how life is like a wave. Right? And if you've at all done physics, you know that the wave that you see on the top of the ocean, that's not everything. A wave is a cycle, right? And it's a moving in a circle, it's energy moving in a circle, and all we're seeing is what's on the belly of the top. So it's very much like being alive. You know, we only pay attention to the surface of things, not what goes on underneath. So as this energy of the wave moves, it carries on that beautiful journey right through the ocean. It can go so long before it reaches the shore where it's going to break. And once the wave gets to the point where it's reached the shore, its journey is finished, that circle, that ellipse tips up and the wave breaks. Right? But as we know, if we've been down to the beach, the energy of that wave just doesn't cease. Right? I don't know how skeptics can go, that's it, that's the end. Because if they've ever studied energy, the energy of that wave isn't finished. It goes back out, right? And it goes again. Right? And from that shore, it starts to build up its energy for its another journey, or a return journey home, as we tend to call it when somebody passes on. So it's going to go back another way to the other shore where it started. Right? And one thing we do know about this consciousness is that it will come back. Right? And one of the great joys we had as being mediums, everybody would think it's so morbid, and I avoided it for years because I felt it was morbid. But once you start to connect people to loved ones who have reincarnated, who have come back again, and they generally come back in the same psychic peer group, it is so rewarding. Right? When you can show a mother that if she can let go of the grief of that child, the child will come back to her or within her family again somewhere. Right? It gives a great deal of closure. Right? So, now, this is the one thing I wanted to share with you tonight, and the reason why I decided to do this presentation before we go and do, because this is part one, and we're going to do part two outside. So what I did say to Sarah was, I hope that you got the message to bring an image of a person who had passed over. Right? Phones are fantastic. You don't have to have it on a piece of paper if you have, great. But I've got my friend who passed in here. So we want to focus on them for a little while, and then we're going to do an offering as well. So we're going to go outside. It's traditional at Samhaine to remember the ancestors and give them an offering. Now, traditional offering is food, so we can take a biscuit or cake or something. But if you've got something that you want to offer, something that you've brought along specifically to offer to them, you're welcome to do that as well. But that's part two. So, but we've got to understand what we're dealing with here. And a lot of people don't understand that death, there's levels of existence. This wave of life has different levels of existence. So, and my Tibetan teacher, Kushal, was so specific about this, and the clearest anybody has ever explained this to me. Right? So our highest level of existence, according to her, is the physical. Highest because it takes the greatest amount of energy to maintain the physical existence. But when that physical existence runs out of energy, you die, the way it breaks, you go to the ghost realm. Right? So the ghost realm is the recently departed realm. It is quite tangible. People often feel ghosts. Ghosts can move things around, right? I'm sure a lot of you in this room have had experiences where you've seen, felt them. You've been talking about somebody and suddenly their favourite song comes on the radio, or their favourite book falls off the shelf, or you start smelling their favourite food. So they have this almost connection, right? They still have some skin in the game in the physical realm, right? And as most mediums will tell you, because they're so close to the physical realm, when you do mediumship, you do start to get greasy, right? You get like a film on yourself. And if you don't wash that off before you go to bed, you can have quite active dreams all night. But it's like you get this ectoplasm stuff forms on your skin. Now, ghosts can die. And a lot of people don't realise that ghosts can die. But if a ghost dies, it's got two ways it can go, right? And we can call that heaven and hell, or we can call it the physical and the realm of spirit, right? So when we go to somebody's house and we're doing a house clearing and we're saying, go to the light, right? What does the baby do when a baby is born? It goes down a long tunnel and it comes out towards the light, right? So it can either be reincarnated and physically born again, that's what going to the light can mean, or sometimes going to the light can mean going to the level of spirit where they're not that in contact with the realm of matter, but you can still sense them, you can still be aware of them. In the realm of spirit, we have our angels, we have our deities, we have other people who have passed over and who are doing their karmic journey. The realm of spirit is generally what we call heaven in Western Christian terms. Right? And you'll find in different cultures, it's the same thing, but it's got lots of different names. In the Tibetan realm, the ghost realm is the realm where people can get stuck. They can call it the bardo, the in-between realm. But people just haven't chosen to move all the way into one or the other. So but they will run out of energy there eventually. They don't always have to stay there. Now, if they leave the realm of spirit, they can go down, right, again to the next level, which is the shade and shadow realm. The shade and shadow realm is, we're doing something and then we see just that dark shape out the corner of our eye and we turn and there's something, we know it's really insubstantial, but we all are aware that something has just been there. That's the shade and shadow. It's just that like echo of something that's been there, that's moved past and gone. We often, in the West, our stories of purgatory come from that. And when they do the Hungry Ghost festivals and things like that in Asia, what they're doing is they're making offerings for people who are in these shade and shadow realms or stuck in the ghost realm to give them enough energy to move back up to the next level. So they're either going to go up to spirit, to heaven, or come back into the physical again. Right. So the echo, right? My husband is a retired police officer, and he speaks about how in Sydney, what they would do with the young police officers is they would give them an initiation, particularly if they were skeptics, because there are very, very few police officers who say there's no, that are skeptics, because they get called out for things, people who are having what would be called, possession episodes and stuff like that. But there's an old insane asylum that's abandoned in Sydney called the Roselle Asylum, or it used to be, and nobody would buy it, nobody would do anything with it, it was just sitting there. So if they were skeptics, they would take the young police officer down and go, you've got to go in that building, we've had a report that there's somebody moving around in there, can you go in there? And he said always the guys would come out white, shaking, occasionally had wet themselves, because there was so much spirit in that place. But what was in there, because it was so old, sure there were some ghosts there, but it was mostly the echoes, the emotional echoes. Right? So the old quarantine station at Sydney, we've got the old, anybody been to the old penal place? Well there's one on Morton Island. Yeah?
Bogger Road.
Bogger Road was quite amazing. They do that for the TV show.
You talk about Samhaine Island.
On Morton Island, there's actually.
St. Helena Island.
Is it St. Helena? Is that
St. Helena.
Okay. Yeah. So you can feel it. Yeah. Sorry.
It used to be Penal Colony.
Sorry, say
It used to be Penal Colony.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was the jail up here in Brisbane. Where they used to send them out to the island.
And it was a quarantine as well.
Yeah, I thought so. But if you go there, you can still feel it. And it's very hard to get specific photos there. I have got one from the old quarantine station in Sydney that one of my relatives have sent me of it's so clear, and a Chinaman with a coolie hat in the distance coming through the window. And you can feel it. And there can be any of those photos. But quite often if there's lots of emotion in a place, you just have that emotional echo. Not everybody who died in the quarantine station waiting to come to Australia is still haunting that place. They've moved on, but they can still leave that echo behind, that emotional echo behind as well. So that energy doesn't just dissipate. And then it can be less, which is just the emotional energy. Sensing murder, what they're usually finding on that show is the emotion that's been anchored into a place, just sheer emotion. Right? So there's the echo where you can still see things, but where there's nothing left, it's almost like psychometry. You can feel what has happened. Right? And then you've got the thought realm. The thought realm is just, when you're having one of those days where something just pops into your mind and it's so random and so from the left and nothing that you would ever think. And you just go, where did that come from? Sometimes that's all that's left that they can do. Just give a thought. Just give a thought. And the final level is nothingness or nirvana, where you blend it back into the energy around you. And as my teacher said, from that point there is no possibility of reincarnation. All personality is lost at that stage. So, according to her tradition, which is the Tibetan Shamanic tradition, it was completely the opposite to what the voices think about nirvana. So that nothingness of nirvana, you don't want to go there because you can't get reincarnated. But if they gather joy, they can come back for a reincarnation through the levels until they eventually get back to physical. And we know that the physical is quite an amazing place because every being on any of those levels, unless they are depressed and losing energy, wants to go back here. They want to be a baby again. They want to have that joy and that fun that we have with this life. Sure, there's things wrong, but gee whiz, it's a great world. Right? And if you're a medium, you get told that over and over again. Enjoy it while you're here. Don't leave it too soon. It's so good there. You don't know how lucky you are. You hear this over and over and over again from Spirit. So Spirit is telling us it's really good here. So if this challenges the way that you think about the spirit realm, it's not my job to challenge you. It's just a suggestion, right? My teacher taught me from my experience. I can feel these realms. I can see it fits really, really well. Tonight, what we will be doing, depending upon what you want to connect with, is we'll be connecting either with ghost or spirit. So those first two realms below physical. Alright, so that's generally what we'll be offering when we're making an offering to our friends or ancestors who have passed over. Right? So who's going to try and connect with somebody who's passed over recently? Like recently, like within the last couple of years. Who's going to try tonight to connect and make an offering to somebody who's passed over in the last couple of years?
I could do that. I haven't got a photo though.
That's all right. You generally look it up on your phone. Or is it, so we're looking at somebody who's more than 2 years for most people? Okay. Right, so that's generally the spirit realm that we're looking at. Generally, if they're going to be in the ghost realm, it's about 18 months, 3 years. But if longer than that, they're either in the spirit realm, getting ready for their next incarnation, connecting with all the other spirit that they need to, back with their psychic peer group again, getting ready to come back to the physical psychic peer group. So they're usually somewhere in there. So does that make sense for you? Have you heard it explained that way before? It's very simple when it's explained that way, yeah? And generally with metaphysical things, the simpler it is when it works, the better. When they start using 5-syllable words and start talking gobbledygook, you can generally say that they don't know what they're talking about. If it's simple and it fits together, it's usually true. Right? If you're looking for somebody who's telling you the truth, are they telling you the truth? They're telling you a lie. The lies get complicated. The stories get complicated. The truth is simple. So, yeah. Alright, so let's just have a look at a few. We've already sort of discussed that. Oh, this is really interesting. I get after this lecture so many times. I get, life is, if death comes from life, because we've got to have death so that life can come back again. Right? An example I give is I used to have a marine fish, like huge marine tanks that were like 5 foot one way and 4 foot the other way. So you can't take seawater straight out of the ocean, put it in those tanks, and then put live fish in them and keep them alive, because nothing has died in the tank. You actually have to have what they call sacrificial fish. So you just get some fish from the ocean, some little fish, and you have to let them die in the tank. And the nitrite level comes up, and then it goes back down, and then you can put your fish in, and they will live. Trees cannot exist if there's no humus in the soil. And humus is all decomposing animal matter. Things that have lived before, decomposing plant matter. So life comes from death. Death comes from life. This is a natural part of our cycle, and it's not something we should be afraid of. We have to look at the fact that one day we will die. I've been dealing with my husband's aging parents, my husband's aging mother, who has never looked after herself, is still in complete denial that one day she will die, even though she's very, very sick at the moment. Because she's never thought about it. She's never looked ahead, never kept herself healthy to try and stay away from that as long as possible. But everybody around you, if you live long enough, will die, and you'll see them die. But it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It is a natural part of the cycle, and we don't lose them. And even if they're on the other side, we can still communicate with them. So death doesn't have to be a morbid thing, and you can see why in these indigenous cultures, like Mexico's Day of the Dead, it's a celebration of life on these days where we remember your ancestors. And so that's what I'd like tonight to be as well, not a sad thing, sure we have to have, it can be a solemn occasion to start off with. But when you get in contact with them again and you know they're coming back, it's joyful. And they're in the cycle and we haven't lost them. And we can still connect with them. Alright, so I'll wrap this up. These are just some more pictures of spirit. I'll just quickly run through these before we wrap up this one. That's me doing a hand fasting, called in a blessing, and it's a blessing coming in. So that's a divine rainbow, spirit, coloured spirit, which usually was quite light. That's a gentleman called Oberon. We took him out to meet some Aboriginal elders, and we had hundreds of photos of him from that weekend, with flashes of light around him and all that sort of thing. It was a very sacred Aboriginal site that we took 40 people out to on country. They welcomed us on country and showed us the men's business site, the women's business site, and Oberon works with spirit all the time as well. But he's very much wizard energy, Oberon. That's here, Sarah.
Yes.
That was here. You took that photo, didn't you?
Yeah.
So much spirit in that photo. So that was just amazing. I love that.
You can see not only is there spirit really dense across the back, but some of the people actually have other faces
Behind them.
and circles behind them.
So it's the kind of energy that you work with here, and until somebody takes a photo of it, you don't really appreciate it. You know, people go, oh, yeah, I'm just going to something like Sarah's church. You show them that photo and go, you want to come here? You want to come where that happens? Yeah. So, this is, my husband's so romantic. For Valentine's Day, he took me on a ghost tour. It's a big surprise. It's like, ooh. But we went on the ghost tour of Southport Cemetery. It's quite fun. The lady dresses up and comes out with a torch under the face and tells all her ghost stories. But we were waiting at the gate and just took a few photos in a few different places where we could. My husband's very aware of it as well. He used to pick up bodies out of Sydney Harbour and take them back. And all his mates thought he was crazy because he would talk to them on, when he had the body on the back of the wakeboard on the boat, taking them to the morgue. And he'd go, what did you do this for, you silly bugger? Why did you jump off Sydney Harbour Bridge? Right? And he'd talk to them. And he's very, like, if he goes to a morgue or a hospital, spirit jumps on him. So he doesn't like hospitals. He gets really faint because they'll jump on him at the same time. Anyway, so we're talking to the lady, and I just moved back to Ken, and I went, "Can you see that?" So he couldn't get a photo of that. Ken had the camera. But they were telling the story of the white lady. Has anybody seen the white lady in Southport? Have you ever seen her? That she often runs out in front of traffic from the cemetery across the road. And there's lots of stories of cars swerving to miss her. Right, so that's her coming out of the road. And we've actually got progressive shots of her coming up out of the grave. But that's her. She's just got her foot out. She's just stepping out of the grave here in the background. It was really dark. And it's like projected up there. You can't see it that clear. But the photos are on the internet on the review of the ghost tour. So just have a look. You can blow them up as much as you want to. She's quite clear. To the point where we had a paranormal investigation team ask us for the photos. And I went, sure, you can have them if I can come with you again. And they're like, oh, we want to be respectful. I'm going, well, she's coming out to play, so I don't see how that's disrespectful. She wants to come out and have a look at things. I think the ghost tour people got a bit upset because we got like half a dozen photos of different ghosts that night. Like faces around a tree and little brown man at the gate and all sorts of things. And I think she got jealous and upset because we were doing photos and they never had. This is the old Southport morgue. Winifred sent me that photo. Her daughter was working. Winifred used to come to the church all the time. You can see that at the end there, yeah, quite clearly. Yeah, so the morgue is now, the old morgue is now offices, sorry. Yeah, so Yeah, so that's in the morgue there. So it's like you can see it so clearly. What else can that be? That's a hospital. So it's the old Southport Hospital. Can you see that? The little angel. So these are local photos, right? So these are not just by me, but these are by the local people. Oh, this was, I quite often get, when I was editing magazines, we used to have a ghost photo section, and we put it up online and people would debate it. And we had people send us this orb photo, and with orbs, orbs can be energy, but you can see the difference with that orb to what was around the group shot in here. They're very different, right? And I was saying, well, you've got to be careful, because if you get reflection off a metallic object back into the camera, it can be lens flare. So, you know, we don't want to overstate the case, we want to keep it real. But then I said, yeah, so the orb, maybe not. But who's this little guy here?
Yeah, sitting there leaning forward.
They were so focused on the orb, they didn't see the little guy with his head out from behind. Gravestone going, what? So, you know, when you do take photos, have a look around, especially if you think that there's something in there. A relative who sent me the one from the quarantine station, he took a whole lot of photos and went, I just know there was something in there. And he showed eventually, he found this picture of a Chinaman, which was so clear. These are some famous, not the hospital one, but these are some famous angel photos that were taken over battlefields. Angels are not always a good thing to see in a shot. Quite often they can be bringers of bad news. So, yeah, that one was the Battle of in France. It's quite famous, that one, but they turned into a postcard. Mons, Battle of Mons, I think it was. Yeah. Little girl. Now, does everybody know what a trail camera is? Right, so trail cameras are getting some really interesting shots, because the hunters put a camera up in a tree and will take a shot like every 10 minutes, so they can see where animals are, or they can be set for activation if something walks into the shot. So, and this is in the middle of nowhere, right? And we can see it's been activated by the deer putting its head in the camera. There's a little girl in the middle of nowhere where there's no farms around. Right? So, yeah, they sent me that one, I just got goosebumps. As soon as I saw it, I went, yep. And you can see the deer is attracted to the energy.
Yes,
Yeah, deers and horses. Horses are very sensitive to ghosts and people who recently passed over, and not always afraid. You'll find that ghosts can go to them. Horses can go to ghosts. Dogs can be attracted to it. If you get, there's a particular sound a dog makes when there's a spirit around, and it's this really mournful sort of howl. Have you heard that? And if they start, they'll be like, they set all the other dogs off at the same time. Yeah. That was the same weekend as Oberon. So I just called in a blessing from the indigenous spirits there. So you can see that lady standing behind me with her hands in the head, and she's got like a scarf on. So there's another day here in the photo. You see that head up there?
Yeah.
These are indigenous photos, indigenous spirits, so that have been sent to me. I was discussing it with a lady online, and I was saying, I'll put them in the book, and she was like, oh, maybe not. Yeah, so she'd been worried about whether or not she was protected, and I said, well, just ask if you are. And they took that photo, and there's an indigenous lady standing on their kitchen table in the middle of their house. Right, who wasn't there that nobody could see, but you can see it really clearly in the photo. This one here, you see that? That's what they call a mimi. Mimi, the little black people, was Australian Indigenous fairies are black. That's Mimi. You can see it really clearly there. So, yes, unexplained photos. I thought that this was engineered photography, but I spoke to the person who took the photos, and they were very sincere about. They were actually out doing some scientific work. They took these photos, and they just weren't sure what they were. So they actually sent them off to be assessed by other scientists, and other scientists were going, "Hey, what are these? He's going, well, tell me what they are. I want to know." Yeah. So I still do my mediumship workshop, and I will be doing that later in the year. But just know that Sarah and I are resources. We are, because there was another one I thought, they've got another really good ghost shot in a pub down at Glena's. I was down there with my son for the Celtic festival, and my daughter-in-law just went, "Okay, everybody in the photo," and everybody was going. And in the background, there's a ghost above all of our heads going. It's like he wasn't going to be left out in the photo.